She would have voted same-sex marriage legislation if she'd been in Parliament. Alicia rival, Hamza Yusuf, said he'd always vote for equal marriage, while the only other candidate in the race, Ash Regan, gave her first on-camera comments to our spot.
Alan, can you give me a slot to make some announcements as well at some stage?
Hold on, I just need to contact John to make sure he's there. And can everybody mute themselves, please? Because I can hear a lot of background conversations, which are just cutting into the conversation, into the meeting. So if everyone can mute themselves, I will make sure I'll get John back. For some reason, we got into a rogue Zoom link. I don't know why that is. Zoom is just weird sometimes.
They were committee members who were getting on to me.
Yeah, sorry. Can you just leave it with me a moment, please?
It's fine. But as I said, can you give me a slot to make some announcements?
I'm trying to invite John back in because I threw him off. Hello. Right. We've got lots of people coming in. We've had some problems. Wait a few minutes, Mary, before we start.
Yeah, but as I said, I've got some dates I want to give out. So a couple of other things I'd like to say.
Mary, can we leave it for a few minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Before?
Just tell me when.
Yes, I will.
I didn't put anything down, it just came up.
Right.
Hold on. It's... Oh, for God's sake. Do the bloody thing.
Right, greetings everyone. I think we've got restored. What happened was Zoom threw us off onto a totally spurious meeting. So John and Mary, can you unmute yourselves and then we can say hello to everybody. And Mary can also give her meeting, give her notices. Mary.
Hello, everybody.
And let me just check, we are recording this, yes. And there's John's screen. Okay, good. Mary, go ahead.
Okay, I've lost, I can't see myself now. I was going to say that the next meeting, which is, God, I was already, and then it's taken itself off again. Sorry. Here we go. The next meeting we've got is Chris Elmers, who people will have known from when he was the curator at the Museum in Docklands. He's on the 21st of March, and he's going to be talking about Gordons, who were shipbuilders with the big works at Rotherhithe, but a smaller one in Deptford. And to a certain extent, the whole of the Stones Empire, which a lot of us have been talking about, has its roots in Gordons. I was also going to say that I note that Chris is down to give a paper at Langley at the shipbuilding conference, London Shipbuilding Conference in May. And I think Langley is a very interesting Greenwich shipbuilder. And I'm going to hopefully get Chris back to do him as well. And I'm on the programme to do a speak about William Joyce.
Can you say, Mary, hold on. What is the date for this next meet, the Stones meeting?
It's Chris Elmers on Gordons, and it's on the 21st of March.
21st of March, right.
Yeah, and then on the 11th of April, hopefully we will have a very brief AGM, which will just be for members, and they will get notice of that. And on the 18th, of course, we have Anne Dingsdale, who's talking about this lady engineer in Deptford.
Sorry, which lady engineer? There's a lot of our people watching don't know the background.
No, I know that. I was going to say also, though, that I hope you all read my Weekender articles and the Facebook page, which has a lot of notices on it. I've been doing road transport made in Greenwich over the last few weeks. And I put a challenge on the Facebook page, say, who do you think made the most vehicles? Now, if I'm honest, I think it was Matchless making motorcycles down in Plumstead. But what will be revealed tomorrow is the one huge organisation which made thousands of vehicles in the borough of Greenwich, and which none of you, not one of you people, has noticed. So I'm going to shut up about that and hopefully listen to what John has to say about the Progress Estate. And I have, and we'll put on the Facebook page tomorrow, a list of street names very kindly sent to me by Steve Peterson.
Who's Steve Peterson?
Steve Peterson runs the Arsenal website.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you, Mary. So would you like to introduce John and lead into the, oh, can I just say while we're doing promotions of things, nearly 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I did a talk for this group on the telecoms industry of of Greenwich and Woolwich and how this began international telecoms. I'm doing a version 2 or version 3 of that for the Greater London Industrial Archaeology Society on the 15th of March, which will go not really into this part of London, but will cover the amazing wealth of telecoms labs in right across London. If you look at GIHS, that's GLAIS.org.uk. They've got an event program. I don't know what the I've been a member for such a long time. I've no idea what the rules are for non-members coming in. It's live near Farringdon Station, but it's also online as well. But if you look at the website, you can find out. And it's really about the whole, how London was really a focus, almost a Silicon Valley of the 1850s to the 1970s and 80s. And then it all just disappeared. And it's all become Tesco's and blocks of flats and things like that.
I'll put a link on the to the GIHS website and so on the Facebook page the next day or so. I had been intending to do so anyway.
There will be a mention of Greenwich, there'll be a mention of everywhere from Hayes, where they developed electronic television, to the Dollis Hill Post Office Research Station, where they built the first electronic computer in the world during World War II, working with
Tommy Flower.
Flowers.
Yeah, Tommy Flowers.
Went to Woolwich Poly, and he worked with Alan Turing, the mathematician. So yeah. Anyway, that's coming up in March. So look at GLAD. So thanks, Mary, for putting that on the site. Okay, why don't you introduce John, and we'll go ahead with the meeting.
Well, I'm very pleased that John has come along. I've known him in the Association for Industrial Archaeology for a long time, where he's put up with a lot of my bleats about this and that. So I'm very pleased he's here, and he did a very amazing article recently and a whole research program on munition workers' housing, of course, which we do have a lot of in Greenwich. And he's come along to talk to us about it. I'm very pleased to see him. I can't see you, John, on the screen, but hello.
Yes, nice to meet you, Mary. Yes, as you say, I've put up with you for a number of years. Anyway, yes, my name's John McGuinness. I'm extremely pleased to have been asked to give this talk to the Society, although I think perhaps the progress estate has been rather overemphasized, because I'm looking much wider than just to that estate. Just a bit of background of myself. From a very early age, I've been interested in history. Sometime after I graduated in building management, I joined the Association for Industrial Archaeology and the Construction History Society, and later the Vernacular Architecture Group. From an early date, I was interested in the use of concrete in housing, initially because I'd been involved in system building, specifically Lang's Easyform and Jesperson methods. I later learned that my great-grandfather, John Carrington Sellers, had been a pioneer in concrete block manufacture and in the design of concrete block housing. And this in turn led to an interest in housing of working people, especially the period since the start of the Industrial Revolution. I specifically studied the houses built for munition workers during the First World War for a conference held in Paris, which was looking at the industrial archaeology of that war. These studies have all contributed to my PhD research into the introduction of technology into low status housing. Let's see, yeah. Bit of background then. The war in 1914 created a need for a very much increased production of both weapons and ammunition of all types. Not only was there a need to increase production of existing weapons and munitions, but the war saw the development of improved and new weapons, specifically, of course, the tank and the major developments of aircraft. These increased requirements in turn required increased factory space, which was achieved in 3 ways. Firstly, by increasing the capacity of existing facilities, such as at the Woolwich Arsenal. Secondly, by converting factories from peacetime to wartime production. And one such, of course, was William Morris's factory at Cowley, and the building of new factories specifically for war production. And undoubtedly the largest of these was the explosives factory at Easterings and Gretna, just over the border in Scotland. To house the significantly enlarged workforce, both for the enlarged production on existing sites and for the entirely new factories, there was a need for a significant number of new houses. Many of these developments required financial support from government funds. The official history of the Ministry of Munition lists 29 estates of permanent houses built in England and Wales, and a further 9 estates in Scotland. In addition, the ministry financed some temporary housing and some hostels, mainly for unmarried workers, especially female. If we think a bit about housing technology, housing design can be considered from 3 main perspectives. namely the estate, the house itself, and then the home, i.e. the way the house is used by the occupants. Further, the technology of housing can be considered from a number of aspects, and these include the site layout and main services, the architectural treatment and structural methods, etc., the internal services, equipment and finishes, and the provision of domestic appliances and furniture. The 80 years or so before the war had seen both the development of improved structural systems, specifically services in domestic dwellings. In addition, there had been a considerable amount of regulation, both by central government and local authorities controlling house construction. Generally, the houses built for munition workers were built to high standards of design and incorporated up-to-date services. In many cases, non-traditional methods of construction were adopted. Initially, it had been thought that the houses on government-supported estates should be of temporary construction. However, in practice, two issues killed this proposal. First, the cost of the house structure comprised a relatively small part of the total cost of the estate, the house, and its fitting out. And secondly, particularly at the beginning of the war, temporary buildings generally meant timber houses, and timber, which was in short supply, was desperately needed for other purposes. Britain lacked large forests, and for a long time had relied on imported timber, initially from the Baltic countries and later from North America. At the time of the First World War, the principal components of an estate of houses, access roads and paths, can be summarised as follows. The main services: water, sewage and drains, gas and electricity. Building construction was either traditional, using bricks and timber, roofing being with slates or tiles, or non-traditional, mainly concrete, either concrete walls and floors, with blocks, precast units, or even in situ concrete. Alternatively, structural use of timber and of steel were used, and we'll see how both of those were used later on. And finally, the internal services: water distribution and sanitary appliances, heating and lighting, cooking, water heating and laundry. I list here the 16 of the 29 sites in England and Wales listed in the official history of the Ministry of Munitions that I have considered and visited. I have only been into one home. The owner was able to show me photographs of the kitchen as it was when she took over the house. It was clear that at that time, the house had already undergone considerable change and improvement, which she had further updated. The result is that reliance has, to a very large extent, to be based on contemporary reports, plans and specifications, i.e. it's not very much use looking particularly at the inside of houses that are 100 years old to find out what they looked like when they were first built. So I have approached this talk by looking at typical examples to illustrate the varying approaches to design of the estate layout, house types and plans, elevational treatment, structural systems, and services, fixtures and fittings. So, estate layout. The estate at Well Hall was the first estate to be built. It comprised 1,086 houses and 212 cottage flats, and it was built between February 1915 and December the same year. The design team of Frank Barnes and R.J. Allison, under the direction of Raymond Unwin, adopted Garden City ideas in the estate layout, avoiding long straight rows of houses, and I think you can see that quite clearly from these plans. The estate was in two halves, separated by the Well Hall Road. Both sections comprised blocks of irregular size and shape. You can see there's very definitely houses of different shapes and sizes, where longer blocks were used. Either some parts were brought forward or positioned further back, and you can see here a long block with the parts of it put back or forward, depending on how you like to view it. Where longer you use, and like most estates, there was a range of house sizes. A major aspect was to retain a significant number of the existing mature trees. And you can see here, one, there are a few on this side of the road, but down here you can see the way that the mature trees were being kept, which was quite an important part of their process. Now, in the last few days, I've recently been given a copy of this plan, which I believe actually shows the layout of the temporary houses built at Welland to the north of the permanent estate. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to incorporate the only photograph I've got of any of these temporary houses. I said there weren't many temporary estates because the use of timber was needed elsewhere, but this large estate obviously did use timber. Now, Frank Browns was also the architect for the estate at Road Green Village, built for the aircraft manufacturing company, Airco, in Hendon, Middlesex. Although much smaller than Well Hall estate, having just 250 houses, the same principles have been applied to the estate layout. And you can see curved streets, retained trees, etc. Again, you can see the desire for to maintain the mature trees. It was unique of the estates I have visited in that it incorporated 6 shops, and the shops are here, a pub and a doctor's house. The estate at Crayford for Vickers has a large proportion of semi-detached houses. You can see here and here and here, semi-detached houses. It has no cottage flats, and the streets are laid out more on a grid plan. As you can see, the fewer curves in the streets. Both the estate at Sharhampton and that at Mancott near Chester use the arrangement of setting blocks back round small greens. And you can see here houses put round a little green, and at Mancott much the same sort of thing happening here. While maintaining mainly straight roads. So they're mainly straight roads at both of these two estates. The major difference is that while Sharhampton, the houses are all much the same size, at Mancott, the houses vary quite considerably in differing house sizes. And that may be because this is a very rural location and therefore is likely to house staff of all different grades. Totally different estate is the one for Austin in the outskirts of Birmingham. It's unique in that it was substantially built with detached timber bungalows, interspersed by 2-story brick buildings. And you can see there's a 2-story brick building there and there. I think there's another one here, one there. So every so often there's a brick building to act as a firewall. The estate at Dormanston for Dormanlong, Shortstown for Short Brothers, and at Stoke Heath in Coventry, incorporated curved roads. And you can see the curved roads here, and this one's rather lost behind the pictures. And they're centered on a green, which acts as a focal point. From all the examples I have illustrated, it can be seen that there was a definite desire to move away from having long, straight terraces of houses. Of the estates I have visited, only Eltham near Manchester, and to a lesser extent, Pinehurst near Farnborough, have been developed in that way. The estate at Dolgarrog, which comprises pairs of semi-detached houses, is laid out in 2 parallel rows due to them being following the river valley and with a steeply rising hillside behind them. So having a look at the estates, we'll have a look at some house plans. Most of the estates I have investigated had a range of house sizes and arrangements, and it can be assumed that these were intended either for workers of different status or for families of different sizes. This slide shows 3 4-bedroomed houses. The one at Crayford here is 3-storied. The fourth bedroom is in the attic. You can see here the bedroom in the attic. And it is likely that this was intended for staff who could afford to have a living-in domestic who would have used the attic room. In addition, the WC of the scullery down here is clearly an indication of there being domestic help. One of the things you'll see, it's rather small here, but it is common almost throughout this period, is that there are no wash basins in the WCs. And this was a common feature of housing generally until the late 1970s. The house over here at Wall Hall rather, is just 2-story. The 4th bedroom is on the ground floor, so you've got 3 bedrooms upstairs and a bedroom here next to the parlour. Not all the houses with 4 bedrooms had parlours, so this is one of the larger ones. But what you can see, I lost the mouse, that the living room has a wide fireplace, which was almost certainly intended to take a cooking range. So the cooking would have been in the living room, which indicates that this was really a much less quality house to the one here at Crayford. The one at Mancott is a sort of in between, having all 4 bedrooms on the first floor. So here's the first floor: 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and a master bedroom here. It also has a separate kitchen from the 2 living rooms. But in addition to the WC on the first floor, there is also a WC off the scullery, which suggests that these people were going to be employing domestics. However, one of the more interesting features of this house is that it's got a cloakroom slope WC clearly for visitors. And really, of all the houses of this period I've seen, this is the only toilet that has a wash basin, which is, I think, quite interesting. So probably this house was intended for a family who would have merely incoming domestic help rather than residential domestic help. The most common form of house, of course, was the 3-bedroom type. Houses of this period and of the post-war council housing can be divided between parlour and non-parlour types. The estate at Crayford had a typical range of parlour types. The common feature is that they all have a living room with a grate suitable to take a cooker, a range. The major difference, however, is regards to the grouping and positioning of the bath and the WC. For the better classes of houses, they are not in terraces, but in semi-detached, and the bath and WC are on the first floor. So if you look in this one, you can see here a bathroom and WC on the first floor, and this one down here, you've got the bathroom and the WC over here. So if you want to wash your hands, you've got quite a long way to go to the bathroom. However, the semis, but for the terraced houses, the bath is in the scullery and the WC is off an open lobby at the back. So here's the scullery, bath, WC to the rear. Yeah, we can just see it here. The WC here, and again, sorry, the bath here and the WC off the lobby. So non-parlour houses were generally smaller and of lower status, with the bathroom and WC both downstairs. In the case of the house at Well Hall and Sharhampton, it was necessary to go outside to the WC. So if you look here, here's the scullery door. To get to the WC, you've got to go outside in all weathers to get into the WC. And similarly, the one at Sharhampton, here's sorry, I've lost the door. With this one, yes, you go through the scullery door here and then into the WC. It's not quite that. Oh, sorry, this is the Sharhampton one. I was getting muddled up. Here you've got the back door and you go round to the round to the WC. The rear view of the house at London Road Estate, I don't know if you can see the whole of this, or is it covered by these pictures? But behind here, there's a bricked up doorway, and I assume that is evidence that at the London Road Coventry Estate, you had to come out of this door and go round and in here if you wanted to use the WC. At Row Green, there were these, at Row Green, these were off the open lobby, and the photograph of the rear of the block of the maisonettes at Shortstown. Sorry, we're getting a bit muddled up here. Right, so let's go on to the next slide. Yeah, so here we got, there were 2-bedroom cottage flats or maisonettes at Well Hall, Row Green and Shortstown. These were single-storey flats in 2-storey blocks. Again, there was no separate bathroom, the bath being in the scullery, and the WC was again accessed from outside. For the ground floor flat at Well Hall, you had to go out into the open. Let's see, this is the ground floor, so you go out here and round to the WC. The upstairs one, you had an open lobby here. So you went out of the scullery into the open air and then into the WC. And it's a similar situation with the flats at Row Green. And when you look at the Shortstown rear elevation here, you can see here what has obviously been an open lobby, and here open lobby that's been bricked up, and probably that whole area has now become a bathroom. Now, what is also quite interesting that can be seen from the plans here of Well Hall and Row Green is that there is a freestanding cooker in the scullery. So here's the one in the Row Green flat, and the Well Hall there and there and there and there, freestanding cooker. And we'll talk about that when we talk about internal services towards the end of this talk. So let's go on to talk about construction and architectural treatment. As far as can be seen, the houses as Mancott, Shortstown, Stoke Heath and Eltham are of traditional brick construction. So they're all brick built really, and there's no suggestion with any of these that there are non-traditional methods of construction involved. The architectural treatment of the houses varies considerably from estate to estate. Where brick has been used exclusively, it often can lead to a lack of interest. As said earlier, the estate at Eltham was about the only one which really persisted in having these long, straight rows of houses that really are reminiscent of Victorian terrace houses. However, The house at Shortstown has at least got some architectural features with these arches, and you can see the interesting sort of protruding bricks at the corners, and that's at this corner as well. It is conjecture to think that bricks were more available in the Midlands than in the south of England. And this may either have been because brick production was more extensive there, or that the need of bricks for war industries and factories was less needed. Looking at houses at Well Hall, at Well Hall, it is recorded that because of the speed of the development, materials had to be procured from a range of sources and suppliers. And this, as you can see, led to a considerable range of external finishes with a very pleasing effect. So you've got a rendered house here, you've got brick bottoms with tile hang tops, you've got a rendered bottom here with tile hanging, dummy timber, and the same is true of the roofing. You see some of the tiles, some are slated, different colour slates, different coloured tiles. The architect at Row Green has also used a range of materials, including fair-faced brickwork, render, and slate hanging. So you got slate hanging here. However, due to the shortage of timber, in particular, the ground floors were constructed of, and it's described as 4-inch cement concrete on hardcore, and the first floors were constructed using patent hollow blocks finished with cement and linoleum. However, another report states that the finish was a patent composition, which when polished gives the appearance of permanent linoleum. So who knows quite which was correct. So if you look at the some of the concrete houses, concrete blocks were used at, widely for walls, with concrete blocks cast on site at Chepstow and at Crayford. And at each of these, they use the Wingate block making machines. At Pinehurst, I believe these were in situ, cast in situ, and at that's Pinehurst Farnborough, and at Dolgarrog, you've got this precast post and panel construction, which was supplied by the Abdon Clee Quarry Company. It also says that at Crayford, the blocks were rendered to give enhanced rain resistance. I find it strange that one would have thought that the weather would have been more wet in Chepstow than at Crayford, but anyway, the houses at Chepstow seem to have lasted very well without being rendered at all. So here we've got the concrete blocks were generally cast on site. The temporary casting shed at Hardwick Garden City, Chepstow, was supplied by a temporary railway. You can see the trucks there on the temporary railway. Concrete blocks, however, at Crayford were again cast and left out in the open to cure prior to being incorporated into the block of houses. As I said earlier, the houses at the Austin Village in Northfield were these timber bungalows imported from the States. And I also mentioned the two-storey brick buildings to act as fire breaks, and you can see one of them there very clearly. Dorman Long used lightweight steel frame for many of their houses at Dormanstown Redcar. The frames were clad with metal laths, and you can see some of the metal lathing here, which were fixed with steel rods and rendered with cement render on the outside. The internal structure has been described as being of concrete slabs that were plastered with a 4-inch space between the inner and the outer walls. And I'm afraid I haven't got any pictures which show that. Now, services. the information describing the provision of services, fixtures and fittings in the houses has to a large extent relied on written reports, while drawings will generally show baths, WCs, a wash boiler or copper, and sometimes a gas cooker. They rarely indicate the type of fireplace or range, nor is there any indication of water storage or how water reached the bath and other fitments. There is never any indication as to lighting. There is little doubt that all the estates investigated had both piped water and mains drainage. The plan of the house at Sharhampton shows rainwater butts, but these may have been to collect soft water for laundry purposes. And I remember my grandparents had such an arrangement in 1945. It is recorded that the Roughborough estate, that's near Farnborough, had modern gas lighting in all rooms and mains drainage. Further, the main drains on the estate were about 20 feet lower than the system then operated by Farnborough Urban District Council, and compressed air was used to propel the sewage between the two drains. And it also says that most of the houses had a brick set copper for boiling water for laundry and offered for bath water as well. Where photographs exist, their date may not be that of the time of the first occupation, and so may not reflect what was incorporated when the house was first built. The photographs here are of the living room and scullery of a house at Sharhampton, were taken in the mid-1950s and show a built-in cooker, built-in cooking range in the living room, which has an oven, but no apparent boiler. So it looks like it's just an open fire and oven. The brick-built copper can clearly be seen in the scullery, and the photograph. But there is no evidence of a tap to fill it or a pipe connection to the bath. In fact, I think it was one side of the door and the bath was the other. So I think a pipe would have been very difficult in any case. Although there are electric lights in the photographs, these could and probably were almost certainly a later installation. However, there is no indication of there having been gas lighting, although there's no sign of redundant gas fittings on the walls. Perhaps that's strange because the plans indicate that there was a gas cooker in the scullery, of which there is no evidence in this photograph. The houses at Dolgarrog were supplied with electricity, which perhaps is not surprising since they were built by and for the aluminium company, which was also the regional supplier of electricity. All this leads to the question, how much was provided for the first, provided to the first occupant, and how much did they have to provide? Keith Billinghurst, in his book on the Progress Estate, states that in 1925, it was agreed to replace the register grates with kitcheners. And this is a typical register grate, not necessarily one that was at Well Hall, but one I've got from another book. This begs a big question. Why was there a need to put register grates in when the plan had shown that there were gas cookers? This would seem to be a retrograde step. Now, the photograph of the living room at Dormanston, that's this one here, shows a built-in cooking range, and which appears to have both oven and boiler. You can see there's an oven this side, and I think boiler that side. However, it is recorded that all the houses were to have electricity, hot and cold water, and as one report says, luxuries to the poor, a bath. And of the three plans 2 had downstairs bathroom and WC, and the 3rd had upstairs bath and WC. The plan here of the London Road house, or London house at London Road, Coventry, illustrates the problems I have described. It shows a wide fireplace in the living room, which could have taken a cooking range. However, the scullery clearly shows a gas cooker there. So why, if it's got a gas cooker, why does it need provision for a cooking range? The WC is in the rear extension. Here's the WC, it extends out, and it's separated from the scullery by a rainwater barrel. So, you know, again, this would be almost certainly for soft water, which on wash day you'd boil in the copper here. On the Road Green estate, it was recorded that every house had its own gas cooker, and each is also fitted with a gas water heater, which automatically reduces the consumption of gas when the desired temperature of water is attained. At Aireville in Hendon, it was said that the houses had an open fire with cooking oven in the living room. There was a gas heated boiler and sink in a separate scullery. Hot water to the bath, lavatory basin and scullery sink was supplied from an independent boiler house. So there is effectively district heating here for the whole large block of houses. And of course, we've got to be careful when we read about gas heated boilers, because these are really just for heating washing water in a tub, and not what we would think of as a gas boiler these days. The Austin Village was exceptional since it incorporated the American technology imported with the houses. This included gas lighting in all rooms, a gas boiler, the same in the kitchen, almost certainly just for heating or boiling clothes, hot water radiators in the living room, kitchen, and all bedrooms, and this was supplied from a domestic hot water boiler. Most of the brick flues have gone from the estate now, but when I first saw it several decades ago, there were still plenty of the brick flues that obviously served the hot water boiler. So to sum up, the houses built for munition workers were intended to help attract workers to the new centres of production, and varied in size and facilities to a certain extent. All, despite being subject to wartime restrictions, were clearly both well built and well designed, as they have not only lasted for 100 years, but have been capable of modernisation to meet modern living standards. At the end of the war, the government was keen to improve housing standards generally, with Lloyd George's Homes for Heroes promise. This led to the Tudor Waters report, which failed to promote houses with modern services and facilities. The result was that the Dudley report of 1944 was highly critical of the interwar council housing from this respect. The much maligned speculative house builders of the late 1920s and 30s, in contrast, marketed their houses on the basis of having modern fixtures and fittings. For a number of reasons, the immediate post-World War II council housing was largely designed by and built by those same developers which had built the pre-war speculative houses, and as a result followed their design principles. It is interesting that while the estates still exist in large numbers, many of the later architect-designed and highly praised developments have been demolished. Just conclude by saying that the history of the development of housing through the 20th century is subject to conflicting views and must be the subject of a talk for another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That was good. Type questions into the oh, there you are. Stop saving your screen. Click to exit.
Do you want it back?
No. That's click and then we'll see everybody as they talk. Yeah. No, you still need to click to exit your screen share.
How do I do that? Share.
There we are. That's it. Perfect.
Good. No, lovely.
Yeah. Good to see you. Yeah. Type questions in, please, everybody, into the chat box at the bottom, which, chat is certainly on my screen, is just beneath John's right shoulder. So, but there's somebody's now, okay, let me look at what we've got already. I'll read them out to save you having to. I asked the question, why did they say, it was 1918, and it was 30 years after the LCC and the borough of Greenwich, the borough of Woolwich rather. Why did they say Eltham, Kent?
Sorry, why did I?
Say Eltham, Kent. It wasn't in Kent, it was part of the County of London. It was part of the borough of Woolwich.
Oh, did I say Kent?
So there's all those diagrams, all those plans you said Eltham, Kent. And I know people in South East London were weird, and a lot of people in Eltham still think of themselves as Kent, but you know, that's what they say. I just wondered why an official document.
It was written on the drawing, so it was the architects who thought it was in Kent.
Exactly, but why? Anyway, never mind. I've got a question here from Simon Bass, interested in the Dormanstown estate. When Dorman Long bought one of the Kent collieries in the late 1920s, they built a new town at Eltham. Did they use any of the principles from the Great War construction there? He may be wrong, he says, but he believes that they may have had steel components in their construction as well. So what do you know about the Kent colliery?
Well, I can say that the Dorman Long system was developed after the war, and if you get hold of a copy of the post-war building studies #1, it will tell you how many were built between the wars. I haven't, well, I've got it up on the shelf, but without getting it down, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Testo Flynn says, are you aware of any basements? Were there any basements in these?
Oh, certainly not.
No.
I don't think we really built houses with basements after something like 1875 or something. I mean, the latter part of the 19th century, I think, saw really the end of basements in low status housing.
Right. Because of the cost, I suppose, was it?
And they had bad reputations, of course, because people lived in them, and they were jolly awful. It was a bit like back-to-back housing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we banned back-to-back housing, but one of the articles I wrote, I think, for AIA, pointed out that there are late 20th century back-to-back houses in Slough.
Really? Okay. Right. Well, a lot of my friends in Leeds lived in back-to-back housing when I was at university. So, yeah. Lynn Dixon says, tenants on the Well Hall estate criticise the house design because of the lack of rear access, considered to be essential. Was rear access provided elsewhere? Well, I suppose, I don't know. I'm thinking of the houses I've known and how many have rear access and how many don't. Probably about 50-50, but yeah.
Well, I don't think, from memory, I can't remember. I've only visited the Well Hall estate on one occasion, so I can't say I know it well. But yeah, there probably weren't a lot of, I mean, certainly post World War II, a lot of house design and into war houses, quite a lot of the designs where you had more than semi-detached, where you had terraces of houses, there would be a through passage between adjacent houses to enable people to get to the back. But I think you're probably right. I don't recall any like that at Well Hall, or indeed any of these other estates.
No, good point. Yeah, I'm trying to think. No, and certainly houses that I've known that were that sort of era. Last time I had a look around, the rear access seems to have been filled up and taken over and added to their back gardens and things like that. Murray says, why was infrastructure, e.g. transport, shops, community hub, facilities, library, cinema, etc., not a prioritised consideration? So what was the provision? Well, let's start with the Well Hall estate. What was there some of the community libraries? A bit early for cinemas, I suppose, but maybe. What was there?
Nothing on the estate. There's nothing on the estate there. As I say, the only one of the estates I visited which had any facilities whatsoever other than houses was Road Green.
Yeah.
All the other they were just housing estates, so they would be on going outside the estate for entertainment and other facilities.
Yeah. Okay. Odette McGuinness says, you noticed that the houses with the fancy architectural bits looked a bit like a little like the houses in Archery Road, Eltham. Is that Bilton? It says 1930s. Maybe Odette would come on and explain quite what you mean. I'm not sure I quite follow.
The houses that John showed had like steps in the brickwork and arches over the doors. And if you look at the house in Archery Road, they've got that.
Right. Are they Archery Road, John?
No, they were somewhere else.
Oh, right. Okay.
The ones I showed with the arches and the fancy brickwork is Shortstown in Bedfordshire.
Okay. It leads on to Elizabeth Percy. Hello, Elizabeth. She says, could you please recap on the locations across the country? Some people were unavoidably delayed joining the talk. Could you maybe run through some of those locations? I haven't
got the map here. If you look at my article in AIA Journal, there is a map there. But basically, there are several estates in Coventry. Erline's just outside to the west of Manchester. Dolgarrog's in the Conway Valley. Dormanstown's in Red, what's it called? Anyway, North Yorkshire. And then there is 3 estates in Chepstow. And 1 in the outskirts of Bristol.
And there was Hendon.
Hendon, yeah, well, Road Green and the one for the other aircraft company. So there are 2 in Hendon and 2 estates at Farnborough, all just outside.
Yeah.
I think that's most of them.
That's Farnborough.
Yeah, Pinehurst estate and golly, I've forgotten the name of the other one. It doesn't really matter. The
Farnborough near Orpington, where Dan Hayton lives. So yeah, there's several Farnboroughs in the country. Tessa Flynn says she knows someone in the 80s who was modernising a house on the Progress estate who found what looked like they were considering building but abandoned. Sorry, Tess, could you explain what you mean? I don't quite follow there. Tess, can you unmute yourself and join us? Going. Nope.
Sorry, I was just trying to find my mic. No, I sent my first message a bit too fast, sorry. I knew someone that was converting a house on a progress estate, and then they were digging up the floor. They found what she said appeared to be the layout of the rooms below. That wasn't the actual foundations. She had a feeling that they were obviously thinking about a basement, but I didn't witness it, but this is something that she was quite eager to explore. But you say that they didn't consider it, so.
I didn't say they didn't consider it. I have no idea what they considered, but basements were definitely extremely rare, if any, in the sort of turn of the 19th, 20th century and throughout the 20th century in low status housing.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in South Yorkshire in a terraced house that was built in 1917, something like that. And if you looked under the floorboards and the ground floor, there was about 4 foot, 5 foot of just void. Because it was being built on a marsh, sometimes there was water under there. But yeah, there was just space, so there was. It was never a basement, but it was.
Well, I know they used steps, foundations, didn't they? But it sounds these were quite deep.
Yeah. Dan points out. Dan Hayton points out that the UPO kept using the old counties where there weren't any postal districts. Well, yes, but Eltham was always London SE, Dan, and after 1917 was SE9. But there we are. Juliet says, are they all in private ownership now? These houses you're talking, particularly the Progress Estate, because we're local, but others, are they? Who owns them these days? Who owned them then? Were they owned by a landlord or the local company or something?
I think most of them were owned by the company and presumably let to their employees. And then I have no doubt, you see, an awful lot of these places, the industries have gone. I mean, this is one of the things you learn by looking at these low status housing. I mean, perhaps the Tudor Waters wrote his book 20,000 Houses, which he was involved with all these new estates for new up and coming coal mining in the sort of early interwar period, and of course all the mines are gone now, but the houses are still there and still being lived in. So
I remember from the Yorkshire coalfield, South Yorkshire coalfield, the houses were very stratified in the status. I mean, something you touched on. There was in one estate I know near Rossington, there was the central circle was the local doctor and the local manager of the mine right in the middle, and then it sort of went outwards from there. There was the overseers were the next circle, and then you got the ordinary miners further out. I mean, it was very graduated or whatever, and in terms of the facilities as well. Mary Muller says, in Kent, decent people don't talk to the neighbour out the front, back doors are necessary. Right, thank you, Mary. Lynn says, Lynn Dixon, was the Wellhall estate built under housing legislation, accounting for the lack of other facilities? So, can you explain legislative? Keith popped up. I muted Keith. Okay. John. Sorry, yes. Lynn Dixon says, was the Wellhall estate built under housing legislation, accounting for the lack of other facilities?
Well, not as far as I know. I mean, it was built basically for the government.
Right. Susan Cushion says she bought a flat on the Progress Estate in 1976 with a bath in the kitchen and a toilet by the back door. Many properties have lost their original features. I still have the original picture rails, doors and door handles with cast iron fireplaces in the bedroom. Sounds like a treasure you've got there, Susan. Do you want to say anything about it?
Yes, I'm so keen. I'm 80 in my 80s now, and I just hate to think that these things may go when I leave here.
You're talking to us from the Progress Estate now.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes, I bought it from the co-op. It's
Right.
before Hyde took over. Mm.
So,
Yes, but I'm
yeah,
so.
GIHS, wasn't it?
Pardon?
GIHS, wasn't it?
Yes, I bought it from the co-op. Yeah, so but I'm been so keen to keep the original features, but I'll just have to. I'll leave it here when I go. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, so hopefully somebody will then come in and say, wow, we have a genuine, undamaged, unreconstructed Progress Estate house.
Yes, I had a clean air at oatmeal tile fireplace in the living room, which we kept going. Yes, before I had the central heating put in.
Be careful, or it might get listed.
And another thing about the side entries, they were closed when the leases were drawn up, because I've got a sideway and I've only recently found I've no legal right to use it. But my argument is that the dustman used to come round and the coal man came round, because my coal shed, you had to go through the back door into the kitchen.
Wow. Yes.
I had
Through
a
the
coal
house?
shed in the
Yeah.
flat, yes.
Wow. So there is a legal right of way then?
No, there's not. They told me I haven't, because I had a bit of a neighbour argument over a dog soiling the sideway, and I was told I had no right to use it. It had been closed off.
Oh, right. Okay.
Although I'm end of terrace.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Enjoy your house. Yes.
Yes.
That's actually talking to somebody from one of the estates that John's been talking about.
Yeah.
Well, it is quite interesting how many coal cellars were indoors, whereas toilets were outdoors. You could bring your coal in and tip it, empty the bag and cause dust everywhere. But if you wanted the loo, you had to go out into the open air. The house I visited at Row Green, I mean, that was quite interesting because they combined the open area, the coal cellar, and the WC all into one room to make it a fully equipped bathroom.
Yes. I'm trying to remember those sort of houses, because I'm in my early 70s. I remember houses not in this part of the world, but in the north. And there was a coal house, but they were usually accessible from the outside, not through the house. And that's where rear entrances came in useful. Yeah. Keith Billinghurst says his recollection is that the class houses had rear access when built, but it was incorporated into the rear gardens over time. Yeah, that's sort of my experience. So see the article he published in an Eltham Society newsletter subsequent to the publication of his book, which dealt with Morrison's purchase of his house in Wellhall Road. So Keith, look up Keith Billinghurst's book. Do you want to say anything, Keith? You need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself.
There you go. It's there. They're all right.
That's it anyway.
Right. Yes, I'm not at home at the moment, so I'm don't have access to any of my books or notes. Right. But somewhere probably around 2017 or 18, I wrote a very short article in the Eltham Society published in their newsletter, which had to do with Herbert Morrison's purchase of his house in Wellhall Road. And if you go up the road, it's about halfway up the right-hand side. But he raised a bit of a fuss about this business about the rear access, and just because I can't remember the detail that I wrote, I'm merely saying if anybody's interested in that, then they need to get hold of an Eltham Society newsletter. And if they struggle to find the date, if anybody cares to send me an email, I'll happily respond with the date that it was published, if not a copy of the article itself.
So if you want to email me, you'll have my email address because I'll have sent you the details for this meeting. I will forward any emails on to Keith, and he will be able to answer your questions. Thank you. Thank you.
And can I just say I'm holding up a copy of Keith's
Oh,
book. Hello, Keith.
Good evening. Thank you for the advert.
Is it still available, Keith?
Well, yes and no. There's a copy in the Eltham Library.
Right.
And I understand there's a copy in the RHS Library in Vincent Square. Don't ask me why, but they apparently have one. But there's also a copy in the British Library. So the easiest, if the easiest way to get hold of a copy, if you can't or don't want to borrow it from Eltham Library, is to go to your local library and ask them to get it for you, because that's how the British Library system works. You don't actually have to come to London to go and read the book there.
You might find a copy.
Right, Alan, someone asked about the Dormanong house and how many had been built. And I can now tell you, I've got my copy of the interval study down. And what it says here is that about 10,000 were built in various parts of the country, including Doncaster, Welwyn Garden City, Liverpool and Gloucester, and that 258 were built at Aylsham, Snowdown and Woolgate in Kent. And they were for Pearson Dormanong and Co Limited. I think those were what the chap was asking about, isn't it? Were they built in their estate in Kent?
Right, yes. Where in Doncaster, I wonder? Oh, yeah, okay.
So yes, they seem to have built 258 for themselves in 1927 in Kent.
Right. Okay. Tessa Flynn says, Susan, please photograph those details and record them. So record your house before somebody does something to it. Mary says, what company housing do we have in the borough? She can only think of Harvey Gardens. Anybody else think of any in the borough of Greenwich? The Royal Borough of Greenwich? Any company houses? Apart from
Atlas and Derrick, were they company housing?
By who?
Atlas and Derrick, were they company housing?
Sorry, I've forgotten them.
What about Abbey Wood? Abbey Wood's got co-op housing, hasn't it?
Yeah, but the co-op housing is more like sort of council housing. They were for employees. I don't know. It's quite a big estate, isn't it? Huge. I was also going to say Harvey Gardens, also Prentice Court was built by Harveys. But I'd forgotten Atlas and Derrick. I know somebody's anxious to write history about Atlas and Derrick, if anybody's got any information.
Okay. If anybody has more, pass it through me and we'll forward it. Dan Hayden says his father-in-law's family lived on the Progress Estate until after World War II, I assume World War II, when Grandad left the Arsenal and went to work for London Transport. That must be World War II. And they moved to Ellerslie Road nearby. Thanks, Dan. Do you remember anything? Did you ever visit it, Dan?
No, in fact, it was after World War I.
Oh, right.
When he left and went to work for whatever London Transport was then. They did actually have 7 kids.
Of London or something, yeah.
Yeah, they did actually have 7 kids. So wow. I think that's why they moved to a bigger house.
Yeah. Well, he needed a better job. Yeah, right. Okay. Any more comments and questions? Anybody? It's now 9:15. Another Dan said, because I'm right at the beginning, Dan said that the GIHS lectures are open to the public in person at the gallery, which is 77 Cowcross Street, which is just about 20 metres from Farringdon Station on Thames Link and the Elizabeth line, and goodness me, even the Circle and Met line. So it's very accessible. You can add
one
your-
last comment? Alan,
Sorry?
can I make one last comment?
Yeah.
I think as the conference secretary for the AIA, I am duty bound to invite you all to come to our 50th conference in Bath, which is the first week in September, and details will be on the AIA website, hopefully at the end of the first week next month. So we expect the details to be on the website early in March.
So that's the
Application
first
forms and the like.
September it will be happening.
So it's the
Yeah.
first week in September in Bath, 50th anniversary of the AIA. And as I say, details will be available at about the end of the first week in March on the website.
The presentations are they planning? Do you know?
Sorry?
What sort of things are they going to be talking about?
Oh, yeah, well, it is the Friday seminar will be on young people's involved in IA, I mean. Then on the Saturday morning, it will be, we've got a group of international speakers talking about how industrial archaeology has developed, shall we say, worldwide. On the Sunday, there will be a series of talks remembering the work of the Buchanans, who were Professor Buchanan, of course, was one of the founders of the AIA, and he started with four years. They had conferences in Bath, and there were, I think, 4 other conferences scattered around the country before the AIA was founded in conference in the Isle of Man,
Right.
50 years ago.
Can I just say something quickly about Professor Buchanan, that he did have very considerable links with Eltham and a lot of friends in Eltham. I've always understood he used to tell me about them, and I think there are people there who will remember him well.
Oh, right. Marion Kennett wants to ask a question. She's got her hand up. So go on, Marion.
Well, thank you, Alan. First of all, can we thank Elizabeth Piercy for giving us the code for getting in, because for another unknown reason, we couldn't join the meeting at the beginning of John McGuinness's talk. But we've been listening with interest, and we live in Eltham. So obviously Eltham and the Progress Estate is very dear to us. And my husband, John Kennett, has written a lot about it and researched it, and he's sitting here beside me as well. But I think with John McGuinness's talk, it was rather a broad brush of post-war housing. And we have specific
Wartime housing, I think.
Wartime housing.
Mm.
We have specifics here in Eltham on the Progress Estate, which was sort of a broad brush. We're not covered what we heard properly.
We only heard so much.
Yeah, and we didn't hear it all. So did anybody else? Did
it was
anybody,
badly advertised.
John,
It was
did
badly
anybody
advertised.
have a problem getting online tonight for the talk?
Because we did miss last.
We
And we
had
missed-
problems as well, because that for the first 15 minutes, it was just John and me talking in a separate Zoom chat. And then Mary phoned up and we moved to the place where everybody else was. So sorry, Zoom has a mind of its own sometimes, but it is being recorded, and I will, over the next couple of weeks, edit that and upload it to our Greenwich Industrial History YouTube channel. And I put the link on the chat now. There's a YouTube link, but you can also just go onto YouTube and search for Greenwich Industrial History, and it will be there.
We missed the last one as well, Alan.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, I've got a daytime job to do, so you know, it takes quite a long time to edit something and upload
Oh
it.
no, I'm not criticising that. It's just that we seem to be missing out on these things, and we particularly wanted to hear tonight's one. However, we'll wait for the YouTube. Thank you.
Right, okay. It will be there as soon as I've got time to put it up there.
Yeah, understand.
Any more comments and questions? Mary, would you like to say bye-bye and close the meeting?
I would sit up decently and put the
I'm not. This keeps
video back on.
falling down.
What was I going to say? Remember, we've got Chris Elmer's on the date which I gave out before, which is the 21st of March. And as I said, I think people might remember Chris as he was the curator of the original curator of the Museum of Docklands. And he's talking about Gordon's, who had a shipbuilding yard and a metal foundry in Deptford, as well as in Rotherhithe. And also a possible date for an AGM. Please get in touch and I'll put whatever people want on the Facebook page so that you can have a look and see.
Thank you, Mary. Finally, Odette McGuinness says she lives in the Herbert Pavilions and she can put us in touch with the local historian. So, Odette, drop me an email and I'll forward it on to Mary, unless you've got Mary's email address, which is full of M's. I can't remember how many M's are in there. So,
5.
Yes, right. Okay. Well, it's now 10 to 9, and I'm going to make myself some pancakes, and my wife some pancakes who's listening. So I will say, as it's Shrove Tuesday, so I will say thank you very much to John for a fascinating talk, really interesting, and thank you very much indeed. Mary, do you want to say a final goodbye?
Yes, I mean, goodbye to John, who lives some distance away, and I'm probably not coming to Bath, John, so wish you luck there. And to everybody else, it's good to see a lot of very friendly faces. And I'm sorry about I had a difficulty getting through, and I'm sorry, Marianne, I'll try and whatever there weren't to make things easier if I can.
Right.
But please all keep in touch.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, John, for a fascinating.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.